This is the CS Flex 1030 class, and today we're going to go over some data structures. We're going to show you how to do arrays and lists in this video, and in the following videos we'll discuss queues, stacks, trees, and hash tables. So let's start off with a data structure. A data structure is for the purpose of storing data, and the type of data you store will determine what your data structure will look like. So if we wanted something that would contain a lot of information, we could use some sort of table type of structure. If we want just a simple list, we could use just that. So a data structure is just the format that you use for organizing and storing your data. Now the simplest type of data structure there is called an array, and that's just a list. So here I have a list of animals, you could have a list of desserts, I have a list of numbers. That's all it is just a list. Now if you're in your math class and your teacher says count to 10, what do? Well, you count to 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, now you're in your computer class. Your teacher tells you to count to 10. What's the difference? Yes, when we have list in computer science, we start our counting at 0. 0 is our number. Okay, so this kind of is an example of how you do a list in Python. A list is just, I'm saying I have a list of fruit and I'm just setting it equal to some brackets, meaning I have an empty list. Now you could also have a list of fruit and I could set it to a full list. So in this particular situation, I have my fruit set to apples, oranges, bananas, kiwis, and pineapple. So what that does is it gives each position in my list an index value. And I can use that index value to access what is at that position. So if I want to know what's at position 2, I could just say, here's 2, I want to find bananas. So in this particular list, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 items, but I have a lower bound of 0. So that means my upper bound is at 4. That gives me 5 items because 0 is a number. We're always kind of off by 1 since we start counting at 0. So lower bound is the lowest value in the list of the index position, and the upper bound is the uppermost value you can have. And so for this list size of 5, we'd have 0 through 4. Okay, if you want to append your list, you can. I can say fruit.append strawberry, and that will just add another item onto my list. This time I have a lower bound of 0 still, but my upper bound is now 5, even though there's 6 items in the list. Okay, arrays work by using memory locations, and each of these memory locations is right next to each other in memory. So if this has an address of 75, this position would have the address value of 76, 77, 78, 79, depending on the size, of course, of the data you're storing. If you're storing like huge amounts of data, it might go up by 3s or by 4s. But either way, as soon as this particular item ends, the next item is stored in the next position in memory. And for that reason, that's why we can use this index value to access our items. It works by saying, so here I'm setting position 2 to be mango, and it just finds that position 2, and instead of bananas now, it's going to put mango. So this index value is used to find where that position is located. Now, two-dimensional arrays are very similar, only they have 2 dimensions, like tic-tac-toe. That would be an example. You have a list this way and then you have a list this way. Battleship, that's another example of a 2-dimensional array where you have rows and columns. So in this particular situation, I want a list of numbers, and I'm going to have 4 columns across and 3 rows. So if I wanted to, I could set my variable equal to a list of lists. So there's my list of lists. The first list has 2, 3, 2, 5, there's my 2, 3, 2, 5. That becomes the first list. The second list becomes the second row, and the third list becomes the third row. So I have two sets of brackets now to implement which row and which column it's on. So if I were to print this list, I could print data to 1. It would take me to the second row, the first column, 0, 1 on the columns, and 0, 1, 2. It does rows columns, by the way, so it's going 0, 1, 2, and then 0, 1, 2 over, and it's going to print out that 9 for you. Okay, if you're using an array, there's some super advantages that you can have. Number one, you can have multiple items with just a single variable name. You do have direct access to the data. All you have to do is figure out what index you want to print out, and you can use that index value and give you direct access to the data. It has one huge disadvantage is, remember how we said it's all sequential in memory? So that means it has to have a huge chunk of memory in order to use up to store all that information. Okay, so catch us on the next video and we'll talk about how we can overcome some of that huge chunk of data by using a linked list.